how do you like critiques?
Um, I like them because I like to get feedback on my work. Um, I look at my work a lot, and sometimes it's really good to just have a fresh perspective on it. Someone who's never really seen it could open my eyes to something I haven't been seeing for months. So I really enjoy critiques, but really wholesome critiques where I get like feedback because some people just like, oh, this is nice. Uh, I don't know, this one should be cropped in more. Like, ugh. I need like
You want
details.
some substance.
Yeah, I want some meat.
Are you big on the technical aspects of photography, or are you all about the emotion when it comes to critiques?
Things play, but I feel like the emotion, like that's what makes the picture. So a picture could be technically sound, but if it doesn't really have any emotion or I cannot connect to it, then it's just a picture.
How about this? How about you read that second piece, that summary, and then you can do the screen share and start talking about a couple of images.
That's fine. For too long, the media has painted all Black men in a negative way. However, Black men are much more than they are portrayed to be. Above all else, they are normal people. My hope is to encourage all Black men who are making the effort to be good people and to educate others who may have the wrong perception about who they are. I also want these men to use this opportunity as a channel to communicate to society how they feel about being subject to prejudice. This way, we can all appreciate the same men I have come to know, love, and cherish.
Right. Now you want to pull up a couple of images for us to see.
Yes. Okay. So this is probably my favorite image.
Can you describe
And
it
then
to us?
so for me, this image has so many points of conversation. Just because I feel like I could almost split it down the middle and see two things happening at once. On the left side, we have the actual scene, the actual fight going on. And these fighters are much younger than the fighters to the right side. On the right side, you also have the coaches who are kind of looking on and observing while the younger fighters are now um, basically carrying out their training, doing what they're taught. And so it makes me think about different generations of Black men and how they would have passed down what they knew back then to this generation, um, which is represented in the fight because that's basically what we're in right now, social war with society. So for me, um, it kind of encapsulates the whole point of the topic, the whole point of the documentary.
Okay.
Um, love this picture. Um, this is a picture actually of Coach Mustafa and one of his main fighters. Um, it's probably one of the more promising fighters at the gym. Um, And in this moment, they were just, you know, he was preparing him to train, but they were also like having a conversation about something private. I could tell because they were whispering. And he he was just trying to follow him because I think he was almost like talking in code, which signaled to me that they had like a very tight knit relationship, not just as a coach and fighter, but mentor and mentee. This portrait, just what I described to you about what I like in certain images, it's the sweat for me. Like if you see these like three drops of sweat like right under his right arm, to me that just makes the picture because you can tell that he's not just posing. Like he's been working, like he's glistening with sweat, like, and the eye contact especially, I feel like it's very confrontational, which is kind of the stance of the project, but in a quiet way. Um, this image, I was literally not even looking for the fighter. I was trying to get a perspective from outside looking in to um show that we don't really know what's happening. We're just, observing from a distance. But really and truly, there's only so much we can see because we're not in his shoes. This was just a nice, I think, close up of what actually goes on before a fight or before, you actually see the actual boxing take place. So I wanted to capture that as well. I also asked the coach why he was doing that, and he said it was actually to protect the bones. Because I was of the opinion that love itself does all of that, but this is what goes on beneath the gloves. So that when you make impact with somebody's face or whatever, um, it sort of holds everything in place. So I thought that was an interesting fact, something I learned about boxing too. This is another one of my favorite. Um, just because he's smiling and he's smiling so loudly, if that makes sense.
Right.
You could feel happy looking at this picture because you could tell that the joke, whatever it was, is a sweet joke. Like, and he's just in his element, um, enjoying himself. This picture is kind of out of character for me just because I don't really see myself as somebody who's very abstract, but I really love the composition of the image. And it really got me thinking about the symbolism of a rope and how different ropes have played out in history. So when looking at this image, I found that I was able to write a lot about what different ropes mean and how these fighters now use it as something else for another reason, another purpose. But I do think it has a place in the work, although it's very different to the others because it sort of balances out all the action and all the faces. Instantly thought about Colin Kaepernick with this picture. Um, they were actually looking at a fight on video, and I didn't think he had anywhere to sit. So he knelt, and as soon as I saw him kneel, I was like, yes, because to me, the picture came together. Like the other image I was telling you about, the sweat on the ground, his stance, just like that muscle just coming through. I was like, yes, this is the picture. Um, and it's a very odd angle, a very odd thing to take a picture of because mostly when you take pictures of people, we tend to focus on the face and like the upper half of the body. But when talking about athletes and men and strength, your legs are very important. Their legs are actually what carries you, what supports you. I love this portrait. I don't love the earbud, but I love the portrait because he is smiling and his skin looks amazing.
Why don't you like the earbuds?
Because I feel it looks a bit commercialized. I don't
Mm.
really want it to, although it kind of like put things into perspective in terms of like what time I actually took the picture, like what generation. So I guess it kind of is okay in that sense.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
marker.
yeah, and then he has on the mask as well. So I mean, it's there, so I can't do anything about it. But I really took it because I love the expression
Yeah.
and the texture in his hair, almost like you could almost touch it. Really, really love it. Don't love how much grain is there, but it doesn't bother me as much because of the intensity that you could see in his right arm. Like that is like literally when I was looking at this picture, I literally was like, shouldn't I just like crop it right? Crop it right into the arm right there. Like that is the picture itself. But I decided to keep the full image just because the face is just as important as um the muscle that we're seeing because of the context of the entire project. I feel like pairing his face with his arm was something that I couldn't just ignore. I need to have the full thing going straight across. And people really seem to like the image as well, for some reason. I really, really like this image. um, because I feel the energy whenever I look at it. Like they weren't particularly doing anything, they were just kind of interacting with one another. It wasn't a get together, they were just kind of in the gym. You see the older coaches, you see some of the younger boys, some of the like more middle-aged fighters, and I just think it's a perfect scene, like something that truly depicts like community. They're just chilling, they ain't doing anything weird, they're just being, they're just existing, interacting with one another, just being themselves. I really like this image for that reason. This image, well, I think as much as skin is important to how we see people, the color of their skin, I think hair also plays a big part. Um, there's this whole topic of how should hair be worn. Um, you know, Children across the world have gotten in trouble for wearing their hair a particular way to school. People in the corporate America can't just be showing up with their hair anyway. It either has to be slicked all the way back in a bun. And I felt like this was something that also needed to be normalized. So I've had my hair worn like this. Like I'm sure you have too at a point in your life.
I'll have to
but
think back long, long time ago.
but basically really just to, as I say, normalize what is already there. Like this is a
Right,
big part of Black community. How we wear our hair is very important.
right. Agreed.
Um, this image actually takes me way back because the gym actually doesn't look like this anymore. He has a lot more equipment now. He has more fighters. And so it took me back to when I was, still getting to know him, still getting to know the gym. And just the perspective between the fighter who's closest to us in the foreground and the scene that's happening in the background. There's a dynamic that's very attractive to the eye, in my opinion. This one again, just for his expression. I think he was in a conversation at some point, but then there are other faces within the frame as well. And you could see that they're all, either in their own worlds or having conversations with other people in the room. This was really important just because I really want people to know the kind of coach. His name is Mustafa, by the way. I really want people to know what kind of coach Mustafa is. He is one of the most positive people I've interacted with ever. And these are the kind of things he has up in his gym. Stay humble, be kind, work hard. Like he literally says these things to them, but then he also has visual um, stimulation in the gym as well to kind of encourage that um, way of life.
Okay. So it's still a work in progress, obviously.
Yes.
Um, so how do you feel about it right now? Do you think that you're 75% of the way there? Do you think that you have the core of the images that you want? Do you feel like you have it exudes the emotion that you want it to exude and for the viewer to pick up on? What do you think?
The whole project is what you're talking about, right?
Where you're at right now, yes.
Um, yes, I believe that the images I've captured so far have gotten a point across, but I feel like I've just only set the foundation for what I'm going to talk about next, which is to actually get deeper into the coach's life and talk about, um, his family life and him as a person, not just a coach. Um, but I feel like it definitely, after seeing images, so many images of the black body, I feel like it sort of conditions your mind for what you're about to see again. And that's the point. I want you to get accustomed to seeing. So I would say probably, yeah, feel halfway there, but honestly, I feel like I just I just really started to get the project going.
So ideally, how long did it take you to gather these type of images?
I've been taking these photos since the beginning of this year.
Okay, so it's a year-long project. How much longer do you think you want to dedicate to it?
With this pandemic, Lord. Um, Possibly 2 years. Like I really want to
Altogether,
focus.
2 years
Yeah,
altogether. Okay. So
Yeah,
you're at the halfway point then.
possibly, yeah.
Okay. And so in the next year, you want to cover the coach's private life,
Yes, definitely.
and ultimately, once you've edited down all your images and you submit it to uh, as an editorial, or you're putting images together for a show, what is your ideal number of images do you think would carry over?
That's a tough one.
Right.
um, I don't know. I mean, initially when I started off, I felt as though it needed to be a lot just because I need people to know that this is not something that I literally had to go into the depths of the earth to find. I want people to know that this was like a 30-minute drive away in a gym in a community, and I could find another one in another area, in another community. And so I felt as though I needed to have a lot. Um, but that might not be the case when I look at everything together. Um, but I want people to see the different faces, the variety across the board in terms of age, even skin tone, because we all black, but we're not all the same skin tone.
Well, that makes your mission a lot easier when you're in the gym room and you're surrounded by all these different people. But once you decide to go into the coach's home, you won't have that type of diversity available to you. So, how would you reconcile focusing on one individual face and story versus here, where you're kind of dipping into everybody's life?
Whenever I try and talk about one person, I think it's also important to talk about them through other people. So at least from what I imagine at this point, when I go into his home, I'll be taking pictures of him, but also from a perspective of, his wife and his kids. So he has 5 kids, I believe. 3 girls, 2 boys, all different ages. Um, and so I think as much as he will represent himself, his family would also be able to validate who he is.
So
Um,
it sounds to me like you are focusing on one particular individual. But from the images that you've shown here today, it feels more like you're investigating the gym itself,
yes.
which is full of black men. There's black men everywhere doing black men things. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But as soon as you cross over into one man's personal life, then it becomes more about that one man. And there may feel like a disconnect between the images that you've shown now versus the images that you have yet to um, capture. So that's something that you might want to keep in mind, because although he was in a few of the images, I never got the sense that he was the major focus of this series. So if you are intent on going into the home, when you do go back to the gym, I would like to see him. I would like to see more of him. So I think it's definitely possible that if you shoot 1,000 images and one of them is the first one with the fighters, and everybody's kind of looking on, it's possible to have that image. It's possible to have some of the other images with the fighters and stuff, but we need to see him from all the different facets. So you had him in a very immersive setting. So it's all about the environment
Mm,
and how that adds to the story, the context to his story. But then we need those intimate moments, him with his fighter, and they have their own conversation. Well, let's get 3 or 4 hundred of those pictures and pick one from 1 or 2 from those images, because you have your story, but now just like you're in documentary, imagine it's a documentary film. When they focus on one particular person, they don't just show them from the front. They don't just show them from a profile. They show them from close up, medium, environment. They kind of switch it
Mm.
up. Um, and then I love how vivid your images are. I see what you mean when you say you're looking for the quiet moments, and I think that's very important. I think you can enhance that by composition, because you are seeking out very intimate moments, but sometimes it feels like the camera's too far away. So I would like to see you get closer, especially since you've built a rapport with a few of these boxers and obviously the trainer. What happens when you start putting the camera 5 inches from their face,
Right.
or right on their back, or on top of their head? Um, I think perspective is super important. Photography itself is very voyeuristic. So whenever we take a photograph of somebody, a viewer goes into that photograph and they see it. It becomes their perspective. So you have to be very intentional about what you want that viewer to see, right? So I want you to think about how can you push that composition a little bit more. Um, you have one where you mentioned getting very low. I think you should have 20 more of those. You should
Okay.
have 20 more images where you're standing up on a ladder, 20 more images where you're shooting through the door, 20 more images when you're shooting through the ropes, when you're, close to the bag, you're playing with perspective. I like the contrast of your images. I think that's super important. I think you can play up that contrast with lighting. So be conscious of how shadows fall in the gym. Like every part of the gym isn't lit. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's bad.
There's shadows everywhere, and they can fall anywhere. Can we go back to the picture of the little boy kneeling?
Okay. Let's see.
Yeah. So because we have light reflecting off of the mirrors, it creates this very nice accent light going down his back and his foot, or in his leg. You see it?
Mhm.
And that's very stunning. And so we only get an idea of who he is, but we don't know who he is. So what ends up happening is he becomes a stand-in for us. He's not an individual with a history and ideology or whatnot. He's just us. And so we can feel what he feels and imagine ourselves doing the same thing that he does without context. Obviously, what he's doing is for a whole completely different reason than what we feel when we see the image, but
Mm.
that's not always for everybody else to know. Obviously,
Right.
those are little inside secrets, behind the
That's good.
scenes. I've had a few of those moments too. It's like, yeah, well, if you knew what was happening, it would take away from the magic. So we're not going to reveal how that particular trick was pulled off.
Gotcha.
All right, but yeah, so this is one of my favorites because of the light. Because he's not completely lit, we don't see his face clearly. It's in shadow. We know he's thinking or feeling something. His eyes isn't aren't fixed on anything in particular. He has his head down. He's just kind of lost in his own thought. And then for a viewer, that's very intriguing because we don't have all the answers. We have some context, but we don't have all the answers. And so I think images like this is what's going to help tell your story and draw more people in. So imagine the same image um, with you see the man with the white T-shirt in the background.
Yes.
The same image with the coach. Now you're telling his story through the eyes of the people whose lives he is very invested in. So look for those type of moments.
Mm.
There's where's the can you pull up the picture of the fighter in the foreground?
Mm. This one?
Yeah. Compositionally, this is a very interesting image. It can be, some might consider it busy, but I think you can get away with it. But images like this is important in telling that story because this becomes that wide view. It's an establishing shot, basically.
Mm.
Imagine if this was a film and we're on a dolly track and we're just slowly pulling in and focusing on the coach who's all the way at the back of the gym.
Right.
You see it? So
Mm.
we're telling a story. We're telling his story. And this is what I meant by the little boy kneeling with the coach somewhere in the frame. He doesn't
Yes.
have to be in every frame. Don't get me wrong. But it's nice when you have moments like that. So this is
Like
why I
prep.
think this is strong because it really illustrates what I'm trying to convey. And the guy just passed out on the ground. It's fantastic.
See, it makes that little thing make the image for you.
Well, see, you know, when I take my mom to art museums, she likes to make up a story for every person in the photograph. If she loves a photograph, she will make up a story for every person in that photograph.
Oh my goodness.
So,
I love that idea.
but I mean, that's what draws people in, and that's what makes an image successful is that um, once you have their attention, what are you doing with it? And so we can see the determination on everybody's faces, but then we can get back and look at it a little bit more abstractly. We don't have an idea of who any of these people are,
Mm.
save for the coach. The coach is the only person we can kind of have an understanding of because the way that he's dressed, and you feel that his religion is something that he's very proud of. He wears it on his body. It's very visible. So whereas all these other people can be stand-ins for any other person,
Mm.
he is particular in that you know that he has a singular focus. Even if you don't know anything else about him, you know that he is a man of belief. So, um, any images in particular that you had any questions about?
So I. Mm.
I love the AirPods, by the way.
I don't know why
It's
I
it's
do that.
fine. It's fine if it's not dingy and dank and all that nonsense.
I guess my question would be because um I have, and this wasn't intentional, but I'm telling my secret, but um I know if I were to lay everything out in something that was, tangible, um how how effective is having everything at the same scale as opposed to having a variety? Because I have some wide shots and then I have some like ASAP by 11, um, stuff like that. Like, is that really, does that really, like throw off, viewers? Because I've heard that sometimes the inconsistency of um, like the dimensions across the series could weaken the visual, presentation. I don't know how
Um,
much it bothers me, but just wanted to hear your take on it.
do you like comic books? Have you ever seen a
I
comic
don't
book
like
before?
yes.
So, if you look at a comic book, you have the cover image, you have the first page, which is referred to as a splash page, and in the splash page, it's just chaos. It's similar to this. The artist gets to show off. He will have a million images, or he'll have a person in the middle of chaos. Just everything going on, and it's a way to showcase his skills. It's a way to set the mood of the story and whatnot. And then as you turn the pages in the comic book, um, you don't have a splash page on every page. The story starts to get broken down into individual panels. Some pages have 3 panels, some pages have 6 panels. Some of those panels are very slim. Some of them take up half the page, and it's just a variety of ways to approach a story. That's all it is. It's no different than you having a wide shot versus having a portrait versus having a macro shot. You know what I mean? Something that's very
Right.
literal, something that's a little bit more abstract. It's about what conveys your message. And so
Right.
sometimes you want those quiet moments, especially if it's a quiet moment that resonates. So imagine that he had a scar on his face or on his shoulder or whatever the case may be, and that scar defined him for the rest of his life. He was he was doing this something else happened, and then now he's doing this other thing. But it was all a result of that thing happening,
Right.
and the only proof of that thing happening is this scar. So you take a picture of that scar because it symbolizes a point in his life that changed everything for him. Now, do you want that picture of the scar to be the same size of him getting up in the morning, or do you want it to be a little bit bigger?
Right. I feel you.
Yeah. So, you know, there is no right and wrong way to one sequence works, and two, when it comes to framing and presentation and things of that nature, it's just what feels right, what's most effective. Because I guarantee you, if you put images together, and you, or I should say, you lay images out and you invite 2 or 3 different artists to come in and sequence them in the way that speaks to them. Everybody is going to have somewhat of a different take on it,
Right.
but if you sequence the images and you in a way that you believe is most effective to telling your story, and then you lay out that artist statement. You don't explain everything, you just give them enough
Right.
and they see it. And then and it resonates with them, like, I see where you were going. I felt this from it. I see where you were going, but I didn't like it. No matter what the reaction, positive or negative, but they felt something, then that's a very strong sequence. Now, if you put it together and people are confused, like, I don't get it, then maybe you need to go back to the drawing board. But it's very seldom. It's a very thin line. So
So with that being said, this was literally just to, show someone what, like a sample of the work. But if I were to, um just show someone, like give them an overview, what would be like a good number?
who are you showing? It depends on the person. If you're showing a civilian somebody who's coming off the street who has a casual um, interest in the work, then maybe you don't have all day to spend with them. Maybe they have 15 minutes to view the work. You can't give them 500 images. If it's a
Right.
coffee table book, then you want to put 100 images together. I guess that's fine. Uh, the Americans was only 88 photographs, even though he took 20, 50,000 photographs. So
Right.
it just depends on who it's for. If it's for an editor, like in a magazine setting, or even a curator, if you want to show them your work, then 15, 20 images tops, because they're inundated with a lot of imagery
Right.
anyway, and time is always of the essence. And so you want to give them your strongest work. I know people just like, what if I just give them everything and they figure it out? Like, that's horrible. Don't do that. Don't ever do that. We ain't got time to figure it out. If you can't figure it out, then we don't have time to figure it out. So
Good point.
yeah. So I mean, honestly, if you can do 10 images that are fantastic, undeniable, then go with 10 images. Don't try and shoehorn in, 2 or 3 images just because you need to get up to 20.
Mhm.
That's a horrible idea. Don't do it. I
Um,
mean, and then think about it when you start to put together a show, and then you put together that little card that you send out to everybody to let them know that you about to be on the wall. You're not putting 20 images on that card.
right.
You're putting one. You might put 2 or 3, but that's it. So if you can break that down to a very small number, it shouldn't be that hard to. Now, if you're having somebody help you, then it's nice to give them a little bit more to work with. So in that case, maybe 50 images, maybe 100. I won't go more than 100, but 50 images will be good. Because sometimes we don't know what's a good image until somebody points it out, and you don't even have to ask. You can just read their body language. If somebody looks at an image and then comes back to the image and then maybe asks you a question about an image or kind of touches an image, that lets you know that even without even asking them, that you need to slide that into the pile that you need to consider.
Right.
So definitely.
Yeah, the thing with this project right now is that it's being prepared to be shown for web, for exhibition, and I'm also have just decided to put it into a book. Um, so I'm trying to figure out, you know, what is appropriate for what. So that was really helpful information. Um, because as you said, like it depends who, because I can't just like give editor 100 images and expect him to look at it. Whereas the book editor might need, to see something else. So that was really helpful information because now I have some clarity on kind of how to organize the images because I have a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. And the coach is just, he is one man that I have chosen to focus on at this time. But when I just started the project, I had about 5 different men that I had groups of images for. So the book will definitely have all of them in it, but he's just the one that I'm focusing on the most at this time. So I have the most images of the gym.
So you have to ask yourself, and this goes back to your artist statement, because your artist statement reads in a very broad manner. How do you narrow in on one thing? Because I understand that you said that it's black men, but you for some reason or other, chose the black men in a gym setting and not in a gym, but in a boxing gym. So now you have to ask, just like when you did the bus assignment, and you was like, well, why am I focusing on black men? You have to have the same level of introspection, and it's okay to be, halfway through a project and still question yourself,
Right.
because sometimes we get on this path and we kind of coast along, like, yeah, this is what I wanted to do, so I'm doing it, and then you never take time. Well, why am I doing it?
Right.
What am I saying? I know this is my original intent. Um, has my perspective changed? Has any of these images um, encouraged me to investigate a different direction? Do any of these images um, combat the ideas that I came in originally with? Because you can be like, oh, yeah, you know, these guys are so righteous and they're this and that, and then something happens and maybe they're not as righteous, or it's like you said, you want to catch the everyday or the mundane. Well, then are you catching mundane images? Are you capturing images that make them look heroic? And is that good for the project or is it not? Because in one sense, I hear you saying that you want to uplift, you want to present these these images to counteract what negative images that you see, and it's so familiar to me because it's the same thing I went through when I was working on my thesis work. You want to say, hey, we're normal people, but then we're awesome too, and it's this struggle. It's like, well, if we're normal people, all normal people aren't good people. You know what I mean?
Mm. Right.
All normal people aren't exceptional people. That's another one. It's like, we have one Oprah, we have one LeBron, and then everybody else is everybody else. So what does that look like?
Mm.
And does that support your original statement or intent, or does it water it down? So you have to continually challenge yourself. Like, am I doing what I set out to do? Um, are those things changing? And if they are they changing for the better? Is my idea getting clearer, or is my idea getting a little bit more muddy?
Mm.
So you got to constantly go back and forth with yourself. And it's good to get feedback as well from trusted advisors or whatnot. But you yourself, when you look at your images, you're like, okay, well, why do I like this image? Why do I like that image? All right, I like that image, but does it support my story? Does it support my statement? It does, but if it's but, then it needs to go in a different pile. You know what I mean? Maybe this is another story. Maybe this is another
Right.
series. And so that's why I said you got to know what direction you want to go in. If you're going to talk about all black men, it's not all black men. It's all black men in the gym. Because you could have easily said, okay, I'm gonna pick this guy out the gym. I'm gonna pick this guy out who works for FedEx. I'm gonna pick this guy out who's a lawyer. I'm gonna pick this guy out who's a student. Instead, you pick this guy in a gym. And when we look at men in the gym, it's all about virility. It's all about strength. It's about the masculine, the hyper. It's just hyper masculine, really, because you're not just in a gym; you're in a boxing gym. So they're pugilists, which means that they are the man's man, meaning that they will beat anybody ass. It's like, so you didn't just pick any man. There's subconsciously something that drew you to this particular area. So once you hone in on what that is and what you're trying to say, or what you want to see. Sometimes it's just what you want to see. Like, no, I want to see sweaty men in the gym. It's okay.
Oh my goodness.
Whatever your motivations, um, as long as it supports your artist statement,
Right.
then you go with it. And then you have to ask yourself, um, okay, this kind of supports my artist statement. Maybe I need to amend the artist statement. So two things can be true at the same time. If you're
Right.
like, I like this direction, my artist statement does not quite match this, well, then it's time to work on that artist statement. So, and once you do it, you don't have to give the answer. You can lead people in a direction, but then let them come to their own conclusions. That's what's going to intrigue them. That's what's going to make them um, work with, see what they want in the images, take what they want from the images, ask the questions that they need to ask, and stimulate conversation. Because ultimately, that's what you want.
So, because in terms of the artist statement,
Okay.
I've always sort of put it loosely, um, in a kind of poetic way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do you think this statement gives too much information?
Which one? You have two of them.
The poem in the beginning.
Okay. So yeah, your artist statement should be. It can be less than a page,
Okay.
right? Does it give away too much? It doesn't give away too much. You know what? Honestly, looking at it, I feel like your poem is a image in itself.
Mhm.
Like it's this body of work, and then it's your poem.
Right.
It's not. I would say it complements it, but it's a part of the series.
Right. So it kind of stands on its own as
It's saying
something.
exactly. So,
So then do
um,
I need a statement that complements?
yeah,
Right.
it's so tricky. You can have a poem for an artist statement. You absolutely can do something that's very poetic, um, very abstract, or you can have something a little bit more concrete. Either way is fine, but it should complement your series without giving away everything. It's like when you critique a film,
Right.
the movie critics. It's like, oh, okay, we're going to talk about this film, and they give you an idea what the film is. They might give you the plot, but they don't give you the ending. They don't give you all the subplots. They don't do this. They don't do that. There's things that they leave out because the viewer should be able to come up with their own conclusions. They'll definitely put their hand on the scale and say, "Well, I didn't really like it," but they give just enough information that the viewer can be like, "Okay, going into this movie, I know that it's this." And then coming out of the movie, they're gonna be like, okay, I agree with it. Okay, yeah, I kind of see where they went with that, and it kind of helps them. And then they're looking for things when they go into it. It's like they
Mm.
read the statement, and it's like, oh, okay, and it puts them in a mindset. And I think that's all the artist statement does, or it should do, is to put your viewer in the mindset that you were in when you created those images.
Mm.
You didn't have the answer; you just had an idea. And so they'd be like, okay, I know what to.
Thank you very much. That's helpful.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being our very first guest on the Modern Art and Culture podcast. This was an amazing conversation.
I really enjoyed it too.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So give the people your socials.
Okay. So you guys can follow me on Instagram at gifts from Gab. That's GIFTS underscore from underscore DAB. Gab, short for Gabby. That's where most of my work is on Instagram. Um, in my link in my bio would also take you to um, the Fuji film storytelling project that I'm involved in right now. So y'all can check that out. It's mainly the same work, but just showed on their platform. But yeah,
Oh, I
appreciate.
meant to ask you about that. How did you get involved with that?
So Forrest, one of my professors, that you probably know,
Mm-hmm.
he was one of my last professors at SCAD. And he was kind of helping me organize my portfolios, and he recommended the opportunity to me. So I applied, and they liked the story, and I was one of 30 winners um, to sort of work with Fujifilm to tell the story on their platform. So 30 of us showed our images on Instagram. They uploaded them into the Fujifilm website, but they were also so kind to um, give us cameras to document this week. Um,
Nice.
yeah, it was really nice. Workshops, they brought in people to talk to us about lighting, copywriting, which I really appreciated because I absolutely know nothing about copywriting. Um,
We'll talk later about it.
Good, thank you.
No problem.
But yeah, so it's been a great experience. Um, and I'm actually going to be, getting into some new stuff with them soon. So that would
Great.
be exciting.
Fantastic. Well, we look forward to seeing everything that you find yourself into, and imagine exhibitions and books and essays, and sounds like you got a lot on your plate. But thank you.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciated this. This was fun.
Oh, appreciate it. It's definitely fun. All right. So, talk to you later.
All right, you have a good one.
You too.